The moment you're about to understand wasn't a scripted controversy. It was a live television incident that forced millions of viewers to confront something many still misunderstand about Tourette syndrome. During the 2026 British Academy Film Awards, as Michael B. Jordan and Delroy Lindo stood on stage presenting Best Visual Effects, a racial slur was heard from the audience. Within minutes, confusion spread online. But what happened next shifted the entire conversation. Because this wasn't about intent, it was about awareness. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why this moment became far bigger than a single broadcast mistake. The strongest moment came not from the interruption itself, but from what followed. According to publicly available reports, John Davidson, a longtime Tourette syndrome advocate, was attending the BAFTAs to represent the film I Swear, a project based on his life and experiences. Before the ceremony began, a stage manager reportedly informed the audience that Davidson has involuntary verbal and physical tics, and that some noises or words might be heard during the event. That announcement received applause. So what changed once the cameras were rolling? As Jordan and Lindo presented the award, a slur was heard from the audience. Viewers at home, unaware of the context, reacted instantly on social media. Clips circulated, questions followed, and because the BBC broadcast aired with a delay, many assumed it would be edited out. It wasn't. Why does that matter? Because live television leaves very little room for nuance. Davidson released a statement the following day, thanking BAFTA and the BBC for their support, and reiterating that his verbal tics are involuntary and not reflective of personal beliefs. He described feeling deeply mortified if anyone interpreted the words as intentional. That word, mortified, matters. It signals awareness. It signals empathy. And it shifts the narrative from outrage to understanding. But here's where the situation becomes more layered. Tourette syndrome is widely known for motor and vocal tics. However, one lesser-known manifestation is a condition called coprolalia, the involuntary utterance of socially inappropriate or taboo words. Medical experts note that not all individuals with Tourette's experience this, but for those who do, the words are not chosen. They are neurological impulses. So the question becomes, how should live broadcasts handle moments like this? The BBC later issued an apology stating that the language should have been edited before airing and would be removed from catch-up services. BAFTA also took responsibility, apologizing to Michael B. Jordan and Delroy Lindo for placing them in what they described as a difficult situation. Notice the tone of those responses. No blame directed at Davidson, no escalation. Instead, acknowledgement of broadcast responsibility. And that distinction is crucial. Because while the incident was uncomfortable, it also created an unexpected educational moment on a global stage. Alan Cumming, who hosted the ceremony, addressed the audience during the show. He explained that Tourette syndrome can involve involuntary language and thanked viewers for creating a respectful space. Later, he reiterated that the tics were beyond personal control, that public clarification mattered. But here's something many viewers didn't initially realize. Davidson reportedly chose to leave the auditorium early once he became aware that his tics were causing distress. That decision wasn't required. It wasn't demanded. It was voluntary. And that action reframes the story yet again. Was this a scandal, or was it a collision between neurological reality and live television expectations? Michael B. Jordan and Delroy Lindo, according to interviews after the ceremony, maintained professionalism on stage. Lindo later said they did what we had to do, though he also expressed that a post-ceremony conversation from organizers would have been appreciated. That subtle comment reveals another layer. Communication matters, especially in unpredictable moments. So now we have three parallel narratives unfolding. A neurological condition misunderstood by many. A live broadcast decision that amplified the moment. And a larger conversation about awareness versus outrage. But the most important question hasn't been answered yet. What does this mean for representation going forward? Films like I Swear, based on Davidson's life, aim to explain the origins and lived experiences of Tourette syndrome in depth. Ironically, the BAFTA incident may have done more to spark public curiosity than any press tour could. Yet curiosity can move in two directions, toward empathy or toward assumption. And that's where responsibility shifts to the audience. When moments like this happen live, context often arrives later. Social media reacts instantly. Headlines compress nuance, clips remove explanation, but the full picture usually requires patience. So what can broadcasters learn? What can award shows adjust? And how should public figures navigate situations where medical realities intersect with primetime television? Because this likely won't be the last time accessibility and live entertainment collide. And the next time, the response may define the narrative even more than the incident itself. Here's the part of the story that rarely makes headlines. Tourette syndrome doesn't follow a script. Its symptoms can fluctuate based on stress, environment, attention, and unpredictability. Large public events, especially ones broadcast live, can intensify those symptoms, even when preparation and accommodations are in place. And accommodations were in place. The audience was warned in advance, context was provided, support was shown. Yet once the moment reached millions of viewers at home, that context disappeared. This is where the real tension begins, because modern media doesn't just show events, it fragments them. A single clip removed from explanation can feel definitive, but neurological conditions don't operate in sound bites. So how do you responsibly present something that can't be fully controlled on a platform built for control? After the broadcast, two parallel reactions unfolded online. One side expressed discomfort and confusion, asking how such language could air on television. The other side focused on education, explaining involuntary tics and urging viewers to consider intent versus impact. Both reactions existed at the same time, and neither came from nowhere. What's important is how institutions responded. The BBC acknowledged the mistake in not editing the broadcast delay. BAFTA publicly accepted responsibility for the situation. And crucially, both responses avoided placing blame on the individual with the condition. That restraint matters, because accountability doesn't require accusation. It requires clarity. But clarity is hard to achieve when a moment goes viral before explanations catch up. John Davidson's statement was measured, calm, focused on education rather than defense. He didn't minimize the distress caused, nor did he ask for exemption from responsibility as a guest in a public space. Instead, he emphasized something essential. Involuntary does not mean meaningless, but it also does not mean intentional. That distinction is often lost in public discourse. Tourette advocates have long explained that tics can involve words the person would never consciously choose. In some cases, the words directly conflict with the person's values. This internal contradiction can be emotionally exhausting, which leads to an uncomfortable truth. The people most affected by moments like this are often the ones least in control of them. So what does inclusion actually look like when it's tested in real time? Inclusion isn't just about access. It's about preparation, communication, and response. The BAFTA incident exposed a gap, not in empathy, but in systems. Systems built for predictability struggling with human variability. Live broadcasts prioritize timing, pacing, and polish. Neurological diversity introduces uncertainty. When those collide, friction is inevitable. But friction doesn't have to become failure. This is where the broader lesson emerges. If awareness only exists when things go smoothly, it's not awareness, it's comfort. True understanding shows up when situations become difficult, and in this case, the aftermath mattered more than the moment itself. Because what audiences remember long-term isn't just what happened, it's how it was handled. Michael B. Jordan and Delroy Lindo continued the presentation with composure. The show moved forward. Explanations were offered, apologies were issued where appropriate, and a conversation expanded beyond a single awards night. That expansion is the real impact, not the interruption, not the clip, but the dialogue that followed. There's a reason this moment didn't fade after the ceremony ended. It exposed how quickly assumptions form when context is missing, and how slowly understanding follows when attention moves on. What if the real issue wasn't the interruption, but the expectation that live television can always control reality? Award shows are designed for precision. Every second is rehearsed, every word is planned. But disability doesn't operate on cue, And that's the point many systems still struggle to accept. The BAFTA incident didn't reveal a failure of empathy from individuals in the room. In fact, the immediate applause before the ceremony, the calm explanations from the host, and the institutional apologies afterward all point to something else. A structural challenge. How do broadcasters balance accessibility with global standards? How do they preserve dignity while protecting audiences? And how do they respond when education arrives after reaction? Because the next time this happens, the response will matter even more than the event itself. John Davidson's presence at the ceremony wasn't incidental. He was there to represent a film meant to explain Tourette syndrome in depth, its origins, its realities, and its contradictions. Ironically, the live moment did exactly what the film set out to do. It forced people to confront a reality they might otherwise never see. But exposure without explanation can feel jarring. That's why follow-up matters. Statements matter, tone matters, and patience matters. The most responsible takeaway isn't outrage or dismissal, it's awareness with boundaries. Recognizing that involuntary actions can still cause discomfort, while also understanding that intent and control are not the same thing. That balance is difficult. But it's necessary, and maybe that's why this moment resonated so widely. Not because it was shocking, but because it was unresolved. It didn't offer a clean villain. It didn't provide an easy fix. It asked viewers to sit with complexity. In a media landscape built on instant judgment, that's uncomfortable. But discomfort, handled responsibly, can lead to growth. What happened at the BAFTAs wasn't just a broadcast issue or a headline. It was a real-time test of how inclusive spaces respond when unpredictability enters the frame. The lasting impact won't be defined by a single moment on stage, but by how future events prepare, communicate, and adapt. Because understanding doesn't come from perfection. It comes from response.